Everyone. So that was just our signal that the recording has begun. My name is Tennille Clark, and on behalf of the executive and the membership of the Public Relations.
Hello, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. On behalf of the Public Relations Association of Trinidad and Tobago, we welcome you to our Pratt Professional Hour, and we are very, very excited this afternoon to welcome Mrs. Laura Dowrich-Phillips and Ms. Soyini Grey, who will be leading with co-hosting duties for today's professional hour, which would be centered on crafting a press release that the media will publish. We found this to be a very insightful topic that circulates certainly among media circles and the communications community, particularly during what everyone constitutes to be a post-COVID era. How do we write press releases that will capture not only the eyes of the members of the media, but also the minds and thought processes of the general public that we serve? But before we get into the business of press release writing, I would like to welcome my president, Ms. LaShawn Prescott, who's the president of the Public Relations Association of Trinidad and Tobago, to say a few words to welcome us to this evening's proceedings.
Hi, good afternoon. So it's LaShawn Ramden. Thanks everyone for joining us this afternoon. Thank you, Tennille. Thank you, Laura and Soyini, for agreeing to help us understand exactly what crafting an effective press release looks like. Thank you for all the people that did sign up to attend. We appreciate it. And thank you to all the members, and special welcome to our new members who have joined us this week. I'm going to pass you back on to Tennille.
Thank you so much, LaShawn, and my deepest apologies. So now that we are getting on to the business of getting into this professional hour, I'm very, very thrilled to introduce our co-hosts for this evening's proceedings, Mrs. Laura Dowrich-Phillips and Ms. Soyini Grey. I want to take this opportunity to remind everyone that is present this evening that you have more than enough opportunity to submit questions and you know, just to get a feel for all of the information, the wealth of information that is going to be provided to us here this evening. You can do so by using the general chat, which would be to the right of your Zoom screen. So feel free to interact, interface, connect, cohere, and collaborate on ideas and information that may come out of this evening's proceedings. Taking the opportunity now to introduce Ms. Laura Dowrich-Phillips by her bio. So Laura Dowrich-Phillips is a journalist with over 25 years experience working in the Caribbean media industry. And as the regional lifestyle and culture manager at Loop News, which is the largest media platform in the Caribbean, Laura is responsible for the management of the platform's lifestyle coverage, which includes travel and tourism, food, and festivals. In addition to her work at Loop, Laura also co-hosts a podcast called Music Matters, the Caribbean edition, in which she discusses the business of music in the Caribbean. Some of her career highlights include participation at the Stanford University Professional Publishing course in 2007, in which she was mentored by Richard Stolley, who's the founder of People magazine. She was also selected to participate as a Garbo Fellow in Cultural Journalism in Cartagena, Colombia in 2019. Laura also formerly worked as a reporter and an editor at the Trinidad Guardian newspaper, as well as a magazine editor. She took on that role at Media and Editorial Projects. So without further ado, I kindly welcome to our digital stage, Mrs. Laura Dowrich-Phillips, who will be giving us a very insightful presentation on understanding the lay of the media land. Laura?
Thank you, Tennille, and good afternoon to everyone. Good evening to everyone. And thank you to Pratt for inviting myself and Soyini to have this discussion with you all. And that is what it's going to be. It's going to be a discussion, so please feel free to ask questions and be as interactive as possible. So, I mean, I've had a really good relationship with communication professionals in this country, and I really value the work that you guys do. And when it comes to press releases, I mean, press releases are very valuable sources of information. And of course, there is room for improvement, which is why we are here. So, but before we talk about crafting a press release that we will want to publish, I really wanted to look at the lay of the land, understanding the media landscape, because I think that is very important when you sit down to write a press release. You have to know who you are targeting. You have to know who you're sending it to. You have to know, have an idea in your mind how it would be used, where it would be placed. And so you have to understand how the media, what the landscape looks like. So in Trinidad, we have print, we have broadcast media, and we have digital media. There are a number of digital platforms. So you have to understand, I mean, it would require you as professionals to do a bit of work and research. And I have to give kudos to some of the ministries who very regularly would call around and get updates on who's there and who's not there and update their media list. And I really appreciate that because it is important. So understanding who our primary markets are, who our demographics, and that is information you can request. A lot of salespeople from different media organizations will have that information on hand. So it's good for you to know. So you can know, for instance, if a publication targets mainly young people, or it targets people living mainly in South. So that is important information because again, when you sit down to craft a press release and you're going to send it out, you want to know which audience this is going to resonate with. How are newsrooms structured? How are media houses structured? That is very important because they're not structured the same across the board. Print media, for example, you have several desks. Each desk is manned by an editor, and then you have an editor-in-chief that sits atop the pyramid. So you need to know, okay, so who am I sending this to? Sometimes you will have a relationship with a particular reporter, but that reporter may not be the one, for instance, they may cover politics. You have a press release to send out about a bank, and you send it to that person. That person may or may not send it over to the relevant people, and you may just wonder why your press release is languishing in that inbox for weeks. So you have to know the desks that you're sending it to, who the editors you're sending it to. There are some reporters who have beats. A long time when I started, everybody had a beat. You had a health reporter, an education reporter, and they became specialists in their field. Now we don't really have as many reporters on beats. You still have a crime reporter, a court reporter, a political reporter, and you may have people who specialize in different things. So you need to be aware who is specializing in what, and is this person relevant to what the information I need to send out? That's really important. When you come to television, you have producers, you have assignment editors. They might be the ones, you have a head of news. You need to find out who is the most appropriate person to send your press releases to. When it comes to digital, by Loop, for instance, we don't have editors. We have content managers whose jobs are to manage the websites and the apps. And so all of our reporters are general reporters. We don't have editors. So in our case, it makes sense to send a press release to everyone because everybody has the ability to post stuff. Nobody really specializes in anything. And so it might make sense to just send it to everybody. So you need to know the organization. You need to understand the structure of the organization and who are the key people that you need to be sending these press releases to. So once you understand the structure, that will then influence how you write your press release. And this is really, really, really important. Too often we get press releases that, and I know you guys have to satisfy. I know there are managers who you have to satisfy. I know many times these press releases will go through several different eyes and hands, and everybody has a say in how it should be. But too often, the press release is focused on the company rather than the message. Let me give you an example. Recently, there was a ministry that was involved in a big They had a big event, a big program on, and it was very popular. And the first day of the program, they sent a press release to me. The press release was about 2 pages long, which is pretty long. And for about the first 5 or 6 paragraphs, it was all about the success of the program and how popular it was and what the minister said, blah, blah, blah. At the end of the press release, there was a sentence that basically said, well, this program, because it's so popular, we're going to add a new day, which is the new, that is the story. And that is the part of the press release all of the media houses ran with. So just by a show of hands, how many of you have noticed if you send a press release that what is published is not necessarily what you would have sent, that the angle you sent is not what we publish? Just by a show of hands. Okay. And that basically is because the story is buried in the press release. Get to the point. Depending on what your press release is dealing with, get to the point. Because what we will do is sift through that press release. An experienced journalist is going to sift through that press release, bypass all of the PR speak, and look for the story. And we are going to run with this story. So a lot of the fluff that you put may or may not make it. Especially if you're dealing with a newspaper and they have limited space, they're just going to look for the story and run that. So your 2-page press release, half of it may not make it. So you have to keep those things in mind. Again, knowing the media house. If you are sending a press release for news, the newspapers, the first 7 or 9 pages, that is what we call the news hold. That is where the news stories are going to go. It's more than likely that's where your press release, if it's newsworthy, will land. Again, space is an issue. So you have to make sure that lead with the story so you can get your message out. You don't want your message to be lost. And what is the purpose of the press release? Again, understanding the media landscape. We have a lot of digital platforms now. We have Loop, we have Mark Linders, he has Tech News. We have a lot of all the media houses have websites. Everybody's posting stories in real time to some degree. So you have to take into consideration the digital landscape. Hyperlinks are important. If you're going to be referencing a website or a person or something that has a website you can link to, send a hyperlink, because we need, that is multimedia. We need things like that. We don't just run a plain story. We put backlinks and hyperlinks, and you also have to consider SEO. So look at your keywords that you're using, because you want people to see the press release. You want people to see the story. That helps our traffic. It helps you if people see the story. So all of those things you need to take into consideration when you're writing, especially if you're going to be sending it out to media houses that publish on their websites, that only work in digital. Chances are this story is going to end up there. So keep those things in mind. Again, understanding the lay of the land. When you come to newspapers, newspapers work with printing deadline. They have schedules. So you have to understand how newspapers function. Feature pages, for instance, are printed early in the week. They go to print early in the morning. They go to print early. So if you know you have a press release, say you want something to come out on Friday, then you know by Wednesday you have to send it into the editor. If you know you want something to come out on a Sunday pages, depending on what the topic is, Sunday pages, the feature pages go to print early. By Thursday, they go to print. So you need to know, okay, this is the day I need to send this, if I want to get this particular thing in on the weekend. Of course, breaking news, there's always an exception. We'll always leave space for breaking news and things that are of really utmost urgent importance. But these things are probably a little bit softer. You want to be mindful of the press deadlines. Similar with television. If you want this particular piece of information to be included in a broadcast, then you need to know what is the time that the producer needs to get this information. And we live in a world of multimedia. If you're dealing with broadcast, don't just send a written press release, send a soundbite. Send video. In the case of digital, send photos. Visuals are extremely important. Way too often we get press releases with no images. And then you run the risk of us using an image we think we could use that is a good fit, and it may not be the kind of image you want us to use. So to avoid that, please send visuals if possible. And yes, Right, and that's it for me so far. But I just want to reiterate, I just want to make a note that we are not obligated to use a press release that you send. So, but if you follow some of these things, if you understand the lay of the land, you structure your press release in a way that the newsworthiness of it is very visible from jump. If you target the right people to send it to, if you send it in time to meet our schedules, then you increase your chances of us looking at it. Thank you. I hope that was helpful.
Thank you so much, Laura. That was very, very important information, and I'm already beginning to see questions coming up in the chat. Guys, keep it coming, ask the questions. You know, it's a very important conversation. And I like the note that you ended on by stating that, you know, by following certain steps, you get people to understand the true message of what is being attempted to be delivered. We're bombarded by so many messages on a daily basis. So it's important for us as communicators to understand how we are able to truly maximize on how we are able to convey those sentiments to the public that we are seeking to serve. So as we move on in this afternoon's professional hour, which once again is about creating a press release that the media will publish, I'm really, really thrilled to introduce Ms. Soyini Grey, who will be providing us with a presentation shortly. And just a bit about Soyini, she's a senior producer of news at CNC3, which is a part of Guardian Media Limited. She is a multimedia journalist who recently ended a term as the temporary host of the Morning Brew. Ms. Grey possesses a Master in Arts in Public Relations from Westminster University and a Bachelor of Science in Psychology from the University of the West Indies in Mona, Jamaica. She has worked in media and communications for many years, lending her academic and professional acumen in spaces such as Ecuador, Jamaica, the United Kingdom, and of course, Trinidad and Tobago. As a journalist and an avid storyteller, she has a special love for cultural reporting and exploring the nuances of Caribbean behavior in her work. Soyini is a respected journalist who has an extreme passion for stories about the Caribbean and our varied cultural expressions. And I'm really thrilled to introduce once again Ms. Soyini Grey, who will be speaking about getting down to media business, the do's and don'ts of press release writing. Soyini.
Thank you so much for that, Tennille. That was lovely. And of course, I'm so happy to be following Laura because I feel as though Laura said a lot of the things that I'm going to reiterate here. These are not all-encompassing, and of course, we deliberately kept these presentations short because the meat of the matter is going to happen in the discussions because you'll all experienced public relations persons. You'll know the do's and don'ts already. This is just us reinforcing it from a journalistic perspective, you know. So and I'm going to start with where Laura ended, saying, you know, your press releases are extremely helpful and beneficial. Unfortunately, we're not obligated to use them. But these are just some of the things that makes it easier for us to want or be able to use them should the need arise. So these are not in any order of either ascending or descending order. They're really kind of a hodgepodge, but these are some of the things that I think of when I see releases and think that you'll need to, that could be better suited if they were addressed. So when you send a release, please do not send them in JPEGs or PDFs. PDFs are a little better now, right? But they really need to be easily copied. And if you must send your press releases with the special formatting, with your headline on your company logo head, make sure that the actual content is also sent in the body of the email, because that should not be formatted. Having said that, I got an email this morning from an international organization where they formatted the press release in the body of the email, embedded photos that obscured the actual content of the release. That's an absolute no. I would have to, if I wanted to use it, I would have to email them and ask them to resend. That's time I don't necessarily have. So I'm just going to say this part, do not format or do fancy designs in the body of the email. So you're repeating yourself when you send the press release, that's fine. Have the press release, if you must, as an attachment with all the fancy designs, but the body and the content, send it in the email body. So I don't need to click through because I just need to get it. And it needs to be easily copied so I can grab it and put it in my broadcast format and then tailor it to what I actually require. And when I say broadcast, I'm also thinking about newspapers. We have special editing software that we use to put these things together. I need to be able to grab the copy very easily, especially since time is of essence, both in television, well, in all forms of media. Do not send super long, if you can, complicated press releases. Try to keep everything to a page and a half at most. 2 pages is pushing it. I got a 4-page release earlier this week. It's difficult. If you have to, now, all of these things are what we prefer. There are some organizations that absolutely have to break some of these rules. You don't need to break the email formatting rule, but the super long press releases, you might have a very specific, but those are very, very rare, few and far between. Try to keep everything to a page and a half at most, and you'll be cooking with gas there. Laura said this earlier. She sees a lot of press releases that are very organizational specific, or you're preaching to the choir. Try to make them newsy. If it's too self-congratulatory or myopic, it's going to be ignored, or it's more likely to be ignored. It needs to have general, national, wide interests. You know, when you're writing the release, you're not writing it for the president of the organization or the CEO. You're writing it for Joe Blow, who's watching the news, who is reading the newspaper. That is your audience, and that's who you should be writing it to. Put a boilerplate in all of your releases. That is a one-line description of your company. I know you all know this already, but I do get releases without them because most journalists, many journalists, long ago we had beats. We keep trying to have beats in our newsroom. I end up reporting on everything. Even as a producer, I go back to reporting. I report on everything. I would love to focus on culture. I can't, you know? So we need boilerplates because I may not, and then especially if I'm working on the weekend, I'm also the weekend producer at CNC3. So every Saturday, every Sunday, I am there. So I may not have access to walk across to my business reporter or my health reporter, I usually have a sports reporter, you know, so help me out by putting that information in the release. Identify your principals in your organization by name and their designation. John Clark, CEO of Acme Business Services. I need that information, extremely important. I'm going to talk about visuals a little bit. If you can send photos as attachments to your press release, that is fantastic. We absolutely love them. I'm going to step into my bias here as a broadcast television journalist and really invite you to consider sending video. The video that I want, though, is not edited. It's not pretty. I don't want fancy CGs or titles in the video. I really want a straight shot of the main speaker if it's one of those press releases. Once you frame the shot, keep it for the entire speech, make sure it's in focus, and that's all I want. And then once you have that, if I'm lucky and you have extra space, you could give me a pan of the room, pull a shot of the room, for a few minutes, keep it steady, then a steady pan. If you can't do a steady pan, just wide shot in the room from different angles. Well, that you'll be amazed. I do stories that were shot on video. In fact, Tennille can tell you, I did a story this weekend from the Mayor City Corporation had a civic reception. My journalist went, and because he's a multimedia journalist, he did me a solid and shot the mayor's presentation. And I actually got some cover. I didn't get to use much of the cover. And I did a very quick story in my Saturday newscast based on what he shot. And he's not a cameraman, he's a journalist using, I think it was a Samsung phone, but phones now have very high resolution cameras, video cameras. So you have a lot more access than you think. There's a temptation when we do get footage that it's edited. That's not great for news because you can tell that you had a feature someone shoot it, and that also makes it unattractive for me to use, because then, you know, it looks a little problematic, right? So that's my little plug for broadcast, but photos at best, and also caption. So again, if you are sending video or photos, let me know who's in the video, their name, their proper title, their designation. Reinforce those things. Please include the communications person contact, their name, their number. Mobile phone number is best. And I say this because sometimes we work unsociable hours. In fact, my newscast is 7 p.m. That's definitely an unsociable hour. I may need last minute information, definitely on a weekend. These days with WhatsApp, a lot of people are going to WhatsApp, introduce themselves, and not necessarily use a phone call as the first port of call. So you might have some headway where that is concerned, but I might need clarification on your release, names of your principals, or just some fundamental details about the organization. The easier access I have to you, then the more accurate the release will be when it's converted into a news story. Right. Do please consider, I did see someone put this question in the chat, if there's a cutoff point. There is and there isn't. If it's breaking news is breaking news, that takes priority. But we have to be realistic. What's breaking news for you may not be breaking news for the nation. So there's that. The closer, I forgot to ask, what is the cutoff time? There's no cutoff time. Papers have a lot more wiggle room. They could get stories at 8 o'clock and maybe be able to send stuff to print. But the earlier is better, you're going to get a better representation. For news, most newscasts are 7 p.m., but just think about it, an hour before broadcast, I might be a little hostile. I'm not advocating hostility. I really think you need to be nice to people, but unless it's breaking news and it's really essential, or you know you're helping me out by getting the story in because it's a breaking news story, an hour to broadcast is not the best time to now be sending stuff that can easily be filtered for the next day if it's non-essential. But everybody knows when they're working in a breaking news scenario. Office of the Prime Minister, oh yeah. President, yeah, sure. You know, energy sector, you know, those are easy. And it's not that what you're doing is not important, but we just have to be realistic about what the requirements are for national news and segmented regional information, regional in the newscast, or, you know, parts of Trinidad information. And I think I kind of blew through that really, really quickly. So I guess we are open for discussion. But those are just some of the, you know, most pressing things that I saw. I've been sitting on thinking about other things, but I don't want to overload it too much. So that is it for me at this moment.
Thank you so much, Soyini, and participants seem to really be enjoying the contributions from both you and Laura. I'm seeing a letter is actually saying this is really awesome info, and we're so grateful for the opportunity to share in the knowledge that is being presented here today. And of course, the nucleus of this entire experience is always about the opportunity for persons to ask questions. So we have quite a few questions, but guys, keep bringing up the questions as the evening progresses. The first question that we actually have is, it actually was more of a comment that came from Denise Caesar, who, in reference to Laura's presentation, was asking if puffery is still a thing that should be avoided. Laura, you may want to, I don't know, explain why we want to avoid the puffery.
Yes.
Puffery, the press release dancery.
Yes, avoid it, please. Because like I said, I know that as professionals, you have a boss to please, a manager to please, and they may want this particular angle, and they may want the press release to start about how wonderful they are and how wonderful the company is and all the amazing things. But our job is to run a story. Our job is to report. So we are going to cut through all of that and look for the story, what we consider to be the story. So all of those things may not make it. And let me give you, and let me tell you how I learned this valuable lesson. When I started at The Guardian as a cub reporter, I remember sitting with a copy editor. I wrote a story. I was new to this. Wrote a story, was a follow-up from another story. And in my naivety, I put all the old information on top and the new information below, because I was so excited about this follow-up. But I figured, well, people, if you didn't read the story yesterday, you need to catch up, right? And he had a certain amount of space column to fit this story in. And he said, look, story not fitting. He just pressed delete, and halfway in the middle of a sentence, the rest of the story disappeared. I was like, oh, but all the new information is gone. And he's like, yeah, I don't have space for this. So you want to keep those things in mind. When we, as journalists, we are taught you have an angle, you have a story, start with the story, who, what, when, where, why. And so when you're writing your press releases, you want to consider that. Anything else could come after that, but you have a message that you want to get out to the public, start with the message. So you're almost guaranteed that we will use it if it's very newsworthy, and you're guaranteed that you'll get some space in the paper with the story.
Right. And I'm glad that you brought up that point about space in the newspaper, because actually Sharon Farrell's question was with regards to the cutoff time. So can you or Soyini say if there's a cutoff time to get your press release in?
With newspapers, as Soyini said, they have a print schedule. So with newspapers, they have to send their pages to the printery. Pages need to be laid out. They need to go to the printery. So you need to know, okay, for news, the news pages are the last pages to be sent to the printery. As Soyini said, 8 o'clock. They probably still laying out the page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, probably still laying out. So if it's something that's really of urgency and national importance, you stand a chance. If you send it 6 o'clock, you might be lucky to get it into the paper. But if it's something that is not as hard hitting, not breaking news, a little softer, they're gonna hold it until they have more pages to fill on another day. So you may not get it in the next day. You might have to wait a couple of days. For digital, we don't necessarily have a cutoff, but I mean, obviously common sense. If you send me a press release 8 o'clock at night, I'm not running that. Unless, again, it's breaking news, because in digital, we work a lot by analytics. It makes no sense to me to post a story at 9 o'clock at night when my traffic is low, unless, again, it's breaking news. And Soyini was very clear what we consider breaking news. If it's breaking news, it goes up instantly. If it's not breaking news, it's going to wait. And also keep in mind, and this is one of the reasons why I explained about knowing the lay of the land. As much work as Lou puts out, we're a very, very small organization in terms of headcount. So we are busy when the day comes. We have a handful of reporters that have to do all this work. The news cycle in Trinidad is beyond ridiculous. So we are constantly going. So again, unless it's urgent, unless it's breaking news, chances are it will not go in right away. You may have to wait a couple of days before you see your person.
Soyini, was there anything that you wanted to add to what Laura contributed?
Yeah, I think Laura's actually put the nail on the head. I mean, we have news television stations popping up all the time. You really have to consider what their broadcast times are. Of course, I didn't even talk about radio stations. Some of those have hourly news. You really want to try and send it in as early as possible, as far away from the broadcast time, so that they can actually put it together. And Laura's quite right. When I worked in radio, the turnaround times, as soon as you finish reading, you're trying to prep the following hour's newscast, and it's not ready on the hour. It has to be ready like 15 minutes before. So you actually have just under 45 minutes to put it together. So if you get a new content, which is why you have a lot of repetition in radio, because the times are so tight. Television is a lot of things to put together. I need that early enough. If you consider to put it on television, you don't just need the reporter to write it. and someone to check it and make sure that it's correct. You also need someone else to put the voice and the visuals together and then send it so that it could appear on screen for the anchor to read. And even before the anchor reads it, they need time to get familiar with that story. So I really don't want anything for television. Honestly, 2 hours before, 1 hour and a half before is really when my last story needs to come in. Basically.
And that's cutting it close.
And that's real close.
Yeah.
And then if you're calling me to ask me if I get the release and oh God, you think you could pull it in, it really needs to be important because I might have to cut you off very politely, you know, or you know, keep it short. Because, you know, news has to go on at 7. And I might have other stories that I'm dealing with that are already in the bag, but just need to be, you know, monitored.
And I guess this next question would be specifically designated for print and digital. Can photo ops with captions alone be sent for use?
I would not use a standalone photo. It makes no sense for our platform. I would need at least an extended caption, maybe, or some kind of context for it. In newspapers, they can use standalone photos with an extended caption, but it has to be a very impactful photo, newsworthy photo for them to consider it.
And speaking of considerations, and again, this question can be both for Laura and for Soyini, do you think that it's useful to re-angle a release if it didn't land?
It could be, definitely. I think you can send multiple releases for an event. You can let journalists know that this event is coming and kind of get us prepped and ready for it, to encourage us to come and cover. And then after the event, you might want to send another release kind of giving a wrap to kind of aid us in the telling of the story. It's entirely possible to re-angle. You want to be careful with not spamming though. Anything is possible, but you really have to consider context. Is the story of value? It's really important, I think, for PR people to actually be journalists in their own mind and be able to tell the people in their organization, yes, the company is awesome and they really should spend the entire hour doing, just focusing on us, but they can't. But this is how we're able to trick them into covering our stuff. That's the kind of perspective you want when you're doing your releases and sharing them with the newsroom.
I'm seeing Laura shaking her head in vigorous agreement. So I know she has some good feedback for us.
I am very happy Soy made that point about spamming. And Cindy, and I would caution that if you send a press release, it didn't land and you want to re-angle it, put a little space between the time you send the first one and the time you send the second one. There are some organizations that send 1 million press releases in a week. The law of diminishing marginal returns sets it after a point, and your chances of getting those of us even opening that email will be very low because it's way too many emails coming in from one organization. So just don't spam us, please. Keep in mind, we get tons of press releases daily, and we have to sift through. Everybody thinks their press release is the most important thing. But we get tons of press releases every day on our work emails, private emails, via WhatsApp, via social media. We get tons of press releases daily. So we have to sift through all of these press releases and deal with the ones that we think are most urgent, and then take time to go through the others and say, okay, maybe I could use this on this day. And this is something I forgot to mention. Some media, and you really have to pay attention to what the media does. Some media houses have themed days, for instance. So for their teachers and lifestyle sections. So at Look, for instance, we have Family Mondays and Travel Tuesdays, and the news, you see it in newspapers, they run food on a Friday, have entertainment on a Thursday. So you have to pay attention to these things so you would know what day of the week they're likely to use this particular information. right? That is really important.
Yeah, and just to jump on that, and thank God for reminding me about the theme days. Theme days are a big deal, because if you do, like on Wednesday, we have Wellness Wednesday in our newscast, so you want to send your health tips maybe on a Monday, maybe on a Friday. Try to get on to it's one reporter who's doing it, Rashad Khan. You want to get to know him, because he might be well served with a direct pitch from whatever health is, company that you are representing. So that's extremely important. And of course, I have to advocate for the weekend, especially now that the COVID press conferences are not every Saturday. There's a lot of space that has opened up in the newscast. Again, nothing is ever guaranteed, but try to think about, it's not just that I want you to be journalists, but sometimes I want you to kind of be editors as well, and try to think about how you can help your colleagues in journalism inform the nation about what is going on. There's space there may be possible space in my Saturday newscast, possible space in my Sunday newscast. If you're doing events, and if you work for organizations that itself has a theme, so you work for an NGO, and today is National Autism Day, please don't wait for the day to send out a release and say, oh my gosh, today is National Autism Day. And I'm like, are you serious? What are you doing? How? Like, who am I speaking to now to get in my newscast tonight? When I've already sent out camera crews wherever they needed to be sent the night before. So those are things that you need to consider. We didn't talk about assigning, how newsrooms assign their stories. A lot of that is done the night before, but of course you have a general plan, maybe like a content calendar that you have planned loosely from before, and you iron it out the afternoon, the evening, before you will meet again in the morning, or we meet again in the morning, just to make it a little tighter and be sure, well, we said you were going to do this thing, but this thing happened, so we need to change you. But if your organization is a domestic violence organization, and this is a particular day, 16 days of activism against women, let us know maybe a week before, days before, so that we can organize our coverage much better. Because coordinating for these coverages take time, and we really want to do the best job possible, rather than just treat it as a throwaway opportunity, which unfortunately happens sometimes.
And I think,
I just want to add to something that Soyini said about space in her broadcast. I'll let you all in a little secret. Weekends, sometimes there's a lot of space to play with, especially on a Sunday. When the Sunday editor is scrambling for stories, you might want to target your press release for Sunday. You might have a better chance of getting the whole thing in. The beginning of the year is perfect for, listen, you could send us press releases on anything. You see those first 2 weeks in January? Woo! When stories are, well, not so much for digital, but newspapers, when you get whole flat plans with zero advertising on it, because nobody advertises the first 2 weeks of the year, and you are scrambling for anything to put in the paper, go. Yeah. That's a little secret that I'm sharing with you guys. We will publish anything those first 2 weeks.
And I think back from Laura and that anything comment, maybe not anything, but we have a lot of leeway, and it's the same for print. I master work on a New Year's Day, and there's opportunity. There's standard coverages, but there's opportunity, and you would be well served pre-planning. And you know what? And also having good relationships with people in the newsroom, so that people can have these conversations with you and let you know, okay, maybe you want to target that email to this person and send it on so and so day. Those conversations, public relations, corporate comms, you want to have constant communication and good relationships with your partners in the media.
It's so funny, Soyini, that you brought up that point, because I just saw, it was probably yesterday or even early this morning on Twitter, where a publicist from in the US was asking if anyone else felt as if the R in PR was missing a little bit in terms of the relationship building capacity. You know, the press release writing is important, but it has to go hand in hand with something. And it also spoke to something that both you and Laura spoke about earlier, with about understanding or thinking about the editorial life cycle for press releases. So one of the questions, which I think is a really great question that came from the audience, asked how far after an event can a press release or news story still be used? And how can it shaped to be relevant?
That's a hard thing to answer as though there's a timeline. It really depends on what it's about and what's the organization. To be honest, some stories are pretty evergreen and others expire quickly, you know? So if you're doing maybe entertainment or concert, or XYZ had this amazing concert, when the concert done, we don't care. You know, I care the day after, because I want to know how it was received and who performed XYZ. Now, it's entirely possible if something truly amazing happened at that concert that we might want to cover it. So Marshall and Destra performed for the first time together in how many years? I mean, I know it's happened, leave me alone, Laura. But it's just, you know, but maybe that is interesting. And maybe the jump off, you know, the jump off conversation is that is, you know, relationships in soca and maybe the business of fetting in Trinidad and Tobago and economic diversification. I'm an eternal optimist. I think anything is possible. It's really the execution of and strategizing your pitch really specifically and really well, considering audiences and how you are accommodating people. And also sometimes, if you can give me a lot of the content, I might just have space in the newscast and be like, listen, we're running low on space. Let me just put this together, and it happens. But yeah, I hate to not give you all definitive, yes, 2 weeks is too much. You might find a way, you know, if you're creative enough, you might find a way. Just make sure it's a genuine opportunity.
Again, it comes down to what is the story. So if you can't send a press release about the event, whatever the event is, the week after the event, if you're going to send it 2 weeks, 3 weeks after the event, then you have to have an angle. What is the story? What is the story in this event that could make this relevant to me 3 weeks after the event? So yes, so as Soyini said, you're required to be a little bit of journalist and find the story, find the angle that is newsworthy, that will make us say, hey, this happened, whatever, but this is a good story. It has legs still.
We've established that the Trinidad landscape is a pretty heavy media cycle. There's always something that's happening. One of the questions that was asked by a member of the audience today was in relation to some of the points that communicators can include in press releases to give it a more nationalistic perspective.
It depends on what the subject matter is. If it's a press release about turning sod for a new building, then, you know, what is the importance of that building to the community? What was said at the sod turning ceremony? What was in the speech? Is there something that would, you know, make people sit up and pay attention? Is it very newsworthy? You would have to determine that. It depends on the event. Again, you have to look for the story. And I mean, it's not rocket science if you're paying attention to what captures the media's attention. You should know automatically, okay, this is what they're going to go for. You know, look for these stories. Like when you have a speech, usually the story is usually at the end of the speech, as when the bombshells are dropped. So you have to look for the story and angle your press release in such a way. It's almost as if you're writing a story. Your press release is a story that you're writing. So we could use, so when we see it, we see the story and it's like, okay, chances are we'll use the press release as is. If not, we're going to look through it and find the story. So again, think about the angles. What is the story here? Why is this important to anyone? Why would anybody want to read this? Who do you want to read it? What is the message you want to get out? You would have to determine that based on whatever it is that you know, the content of the event or the thing that you're sending.
And Soyini, piggybacking off of what Laura just stated, what are your thoughts about adding trending news to your release to make your story more appealing or palatable to the public stakeholder?
Yeah, it might be a good way to make it very clear to the newsroom that this is something that people are interested in. As journalists, we need to have our eye on our hands on the pulse and be aware of what's going on, but you might miss something. And if you have seen something that clearly is gaining traction and have an angle for your organization or whoever you're representing that makes sense, well, yeah, sure, do that. But make sure it's newsy. You know, make sure it's a newsy angle, even if it's making reference to a trending thing, because at the end of the day, we're doing news, not entertainment, or entertainment news exclusively. So I need, you know, some sort of who, what, where, why, and when to justify putting this in my newscast. So trendy is fine, but it still has to be newsy.
And Laura, I know that you're also very big on the visuals accompanying the press release, of course. Sharon was asking earlier, because she uses Google Drive to share her pics, especially larger photos. She was told by, I suppose, one media house or one journalist that she should send them instead as attachments. Do you have any views on that?
I personally don't have an issue with Google Drive. A lot of the things that I cover, people will send the link to Google Drive, but it is preferable that you send an attachment. Keep in mind, some of us, our Google Drives get very full. We run out of space because, again, we are getting a lot of images and videos on a daily basis. So it is better if you just send it as an attachment. Also, keep in mind, newsrooms are busy. We are busy. So the less work we have to do to access your information, the better.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with Laura there. The easier you make it for us to access it, the better. I mean, obviously with video, I definitely looking for a Google Drive WeTransfer attachment because it's not going to fit as an email attachment. Having said that, the easier you make it for us, the better. My print colleagues would prefer an attachment. And I was talking earlier about relationships with journalists. You're going to learn some people's quick, some people, you know, person saying they don't like to use Google Drive. Unfortunately, if that person doesn't like to use Google Drive, if you want stories to be published by that person or covered by that person, you're going to have to learn their quirk and send it to them in the format that they prefer. You know, so if they could only function, if you send it as an attachment is a pain, I totally agree with you. But you might have to do that.
And on the topic of photos, again, knowing the media landscape. So for digital, our feature photo is in landscape, not vertical. So please consider when you're sending images to send a variety of options. If you send a vertical image to me, I have to crop it. Half of your photo is going to disappear. So please keep in mind when you're sending to media houses, send a variety of options.
And oh gosh, again, I have to piggyback comment because if you're using your cell phone to shoot video, I need it in landscape. I need it in landscape. I need it in landscape. People will tell you, I will call. I'm like, listen to me. We do not Zoom, turn your phone. I can't. I need it in landscape. I need it in landscape. I need it in landscape. I cannot say that enough. Right? I want no more video shot in portrait unless you're doing a TikTok video. We're not talking about TikTok here and we don't have a TikTok newscast as yet. When we do, we could change the conversation. But today I need it in landscape. Thank you.
Just to piggyback on that, when again, knowing that your loyalty is to you have a boss, you have to convince that he don't need to be in every photo because, you know, we get these very boring pictures with the press releases with everybody posing by a logo, right? And that's, I mean, consider the platforms on a newspaper, maybe it might work. On a website, on an app, those pictures not doing anything for readers. So when you're not sending photos, send options. We don't just want the pose shots if it's you know, if it's an event you're having, send some pictures that are live, that resonate, because everything is visual. The way people interact, the way people consume news on digital is not the way they consume it on TV, it's not the way they consume it on newspapers. And you want people to engage with the information that you're sending. So please keep that in mind. We want dynamic photos.
Yeah.
I'm just going to take the opportunity to reset the room a little bit, just to remind everyone, you know, this is the Prep Professional Hour. We're speaking about crafting a press release that the media will publish, which is being co-hosted graciously by Mrs. Laura Dowrich-Phillips and Ms. Soyini Grey. We have a question from Kelsia, who asked, and as a new communicator, welcome Kelsia. She was recently given this task of corporate communications for her organization. And the last time that she tried to send a press release, she used all of the generic emails for the respective media houses and sadly got no responses. So for someone new to the game, such as her, is there a specific listing that exists? And also are media houses obligated to confirm that they received the press release, or do you just send it and hope for the best?
I would say what Kelsia has to do, I think if anytime you start in PR, just in general, not necessarily in a new organization, but sometimes you do have to, is you have to create a media list, which means you have to go into the newspapers, you have to go look at the newscasts and take down names and make calls, you know, do searches, make calls, and boost your contact and create a contact list and try and figure out or ask a question. I get calls into the newsroom all the time. Hi, Laura said this actually in her opening. I'm updating our media list. You might be creating a media list and ask those questions. I have senior PR people who will call, message me this week. Hi, Soy, understand you'll have some changes, or is so-and-so still your XYZ? And I'd be like, yes, this is the email. That's just essential. It's time consuming, but when you have created that database, it is your salvation. And then it's easier for you to update it when the need arises. You have to be aware of what the movements are, because media also has a very high attrition rate. In terms of, do they have to acknowledge? It would be lovely if they could, but if I show you my email, I don't have the capacity. I really don't. It's too much. It's too much. It's not that we're trying to be rude. All of us are West Indians. We know the value of manners. It's really not possible. But you, and therefore it puts the burden on you, because you send the release, you need to call and find out if I got it. And then but there's an opportunity for you to get to know people or reconnect with people. And if you already know them, maybe talk to them about trying to get it covered. You know, so, you know, Tennille just made a reference with, you know, she saw a discussion on Twitter saying the relationship part of publication seemed to be lacking. That relationship part is going to get you coverage.
Yeah, and it goes beyond the press release, like Elsia. I mean, as a comms person, if we need we need something from you, we need to know who to call in this particular organization. So it goes beyond the press release. We need to know who you are as well. So yeah, pick up the phone and call us and have a conversation about, you know, who's there and what do we do and how it's structured, so you understand. And so that relationship will develop.
Yeah.
We have a great question from Marva, which was actually preceded by some compliments. She really appreciates the solid information that is being presented here today. Thanks so much, Marva, for your feedback. Her question is in relation to the presenter's views regarding the business of exclusivity and wanting to be first to break a story. Is it that a release would automatically lose its luster if another media house carries the story first?
It could, but I hate it depends, but that unfortunately is the reality. If your story is strong enough, you need to use exclusivity very, very gingerly. You have to be careful with it. You need to be sure that people want that information, and as soon as they grab it, they're going to broadcast it, whether you want them to or not. And really what you're trying to do is craft how they use your information. And those of you who are in that type of business or have had to manage communications for such that type of information, you know it when you have it. So exclusivity is, I mean, I have seen people send releases about events and it has an embargo, and I'm like, okay, because I wasn't using it anyway, you know. It's you really have to, and I understand that you might be working with people who are senior to you, decision makers who think that this is, you know, a really precious piece of information you have here. But I don't see in the current media landscape, there's a lot of need. Very rare do I see embargoed information. I spoke about the type of businesses that can send us a release whenever they want and will get it published. They have the capacity to embargo as well.
Yeah. Now, I've experienced people who will, depending on who they want to reach. So for instance, say they think, well, Loop has a more regional reach and I want this to go to the region, I will send it to you first because I want this regionally. Again, it depends on who your audience is and understanding who the target audience of the particular media houses. I've also seen that exclusivity thing backfire. I've seen people send press releases to other people and tell them, okay, you have it first, but don't publish it today. And yeah, journalists are highly competitive. So telling somebody, not me, but telling somebody not to publish it today, knowing that you're going to be sending that out 2 days later to everybody, they're going to publish it. They are going to lie to you and say, yes, I'm not going to publish it, and they're going to publish it, especially if it's a hot story. They are going to do that. It backfires. Also, if you send it, so say you send a big news story to CNC3, what then happens is that everybody else is going to try to get that story, however they get it, because you didn't send a press release to them. And then you run the risk of misinformation being out there because they're going to call everybody in your organization, somebody they know, and get a story that seems to be in line with what you sent out. So you always want, as a PR people, you want to control the narrative. So, you know, it could backfire.
Yeah, Laura's very right about that. And I mean, you see scramble stories. If you regularly read the three papers, you can tell this person broke it and these two others are scrambling. And you don't necessarily want a scramble story because they may not have access to the breaking news, but they might uncover some stuff that you didn't want them to uncover, you know, and especially if they have to go through the back door to get the story. And it's not that they're trying to assassinate anybody, but they're trying to get the story, you know, and you probably have created a situation where what was supposed to be a controlled news story is now out of your control, you know, unless you wanted the chaos and that was part of your strategic plan, then, you know.
Or worse, destroy relationships with media people because we can be very petty. So
Yeah,
if we tell ourselves, oh, well, you seem to favor Soyini and you just want to send her alone press releases, well, when you do send a press release to me, good luck getting that in because...
Funny that Laura said that because this weekend I was talking to a colleague and they were saying, yeah, so-and-so never used to let us cover the events. All of a sudden, I get an invitation to cover XYZ. And my producer was very, very enthused about it. And I had to set her straight, but we absolutely are not. Because these people had a bacchanal and all of a sudden they understand the value of media. And two, I mean, we're talking about press releases, but courtesy both ways is extremely important. I'm not an advocate of being mean to public relations people, but also vice versa. So be careful with the exclusivity because tables can turn and it's not nice.
And the final question that I'm seeing from the audience is with regards to gifts. So how significantly are relationships with the media impacted, or in this case, I'm assuming improved when companies send corporate gifts at Christmas time? Does it really improve your chances of getting your releases featured in the future?
I hate to say yes, but I also want to say don't feel compelled to do it because it really is not ethical. If you're sending it with no, like you see influencers now, right? They're lowest in the US and in the UK, that influencers may have to make it very clear when they've received something as PR. They have to declare it, and they have to make it very clear when they're doing an ad. That's actually kind of borrowed from journalism, right? If journalists are human, you know, if I get this really nice product from so-and-so, I might be swayed, my emotions might be whatever, but really and truly, it's not ethical. And you could fall, you could, you don't never feel that you have to, you know,
No.
goodness of your heart, but never feel that you have to.
No, it's not going to influence anything really. We like gifts. I mean, thanks. We like gifts. And some of us will publicize it on our social media and say thank you XYZ for the nice gift. Sometimes we don't publicize anything at all because that's advertisement. But no, it doesn't influence. It's not supposed to influence anything, to be honest. You're not guaranteed. I mean, it's good for relationship building, but it's not guaranteed that you're going to get a story in because you gave us a nice umbrella or a nice flashlight or something.
Yeah, I like what Laura said. It's good for relationship building. Use it as a way of getting to know somebody in the newsroom as a person, knowing what their beats are, what they need, so you can have conversations about you know, the news cycle and who's a good person to pitch XYZ for, how you think I could get this story in the newscast. Use it as that. But don't see it as a bribery thing, because that's not okay. Because at the end, journalists have to serve the national interest. Is that public service is essential to freedom of the essential to democracy and development, you know, countries' development and all of that. So you really don't want to be playing with that too much. And journalists really do take their jobs very, very seriously. If it's for relationship building, all well and good, because you might have information that I may not realize is important. So we are getting to know each other. That is the best motivation.
And some media houses have rules regarding gifts. So you have to declare it, especially if they're over a certain value, you have to declare it. You may not be allowed to give it. So there are rules that govern us accepting gifts from people.
Yeah. I actually know of 2 senior journalists in Trinidad who will not accept gifts, even if it's something in earnest and you're not doing it to sway or bribe, just by their own principled measures, they will not accept it. 2 very senior journalists in Trinidad that would. So I guess it's also about understanding, as Soyini mentioned, the beat of the person and really putting that R back into PR and using the opportunities, not just to craft in the right press release, but also relationship building as well. Laura, if you had to think of 3 things in a press release as we're winding down this evening session, 3 things in a press release where you're just like, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. What would those 3 things be? 1 page, please. Make sure I could copy and paste it. I cannot tell you how many times I have gotten JPEGs as press releases. I am not transcribing anything. That annoys me no end. I will delete that email. And photos. Because if you don't send me a photo, I now have to go and look for a photo. A variety of photos and landscape. Yes, give me some options. Give me some options and caption them, please. Caption them. That is important for SEO, so please caption them. Soyini, what about you? 3 things where you're like, ooh, yes, my life is easy. Thank you, human, for sending this to me. You get it. The 3 things.
I mean, if you could send me video with the press release, I would be very, and 1 page, yeah, you cooking with gas. 1 page press release with accompanying video, I'm happy. Very, very happy. So 1 page, video / photo, variety. To be honest, you said what I want. I want. I want video. I want video. and Angelette, I know you said 3, but she had 2, so I'll take one of hers. I'll take one of hers. Angelette, give me the story on top. Please don't make me have to look for the story, please. mean, yes, yes. Oh my God. You know?
Now that we have wrapped up the question and answer segments, thank you so much, everyone, for your incredible questions. I think, it really encouraged a very thoughtful conversation about press release writing and the things or the pillars that really support the press release writing that will have journalists ready to work with you for your respective stories. At this time, I would like to introduce our Director of Membership at the Public Relations Association of Trinidad and Tobago, Ms. Natifa Carr, who will now give us the vote of thanks.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I want to start by saying, those of you who found this information, the information shared here today valuable, let's see a thumbs up in the chat, a thumbs up, a clap, the clapping hands, something that shows that you really appreciated. Let me look for my thumbs up. Yeah, that showed the information that was shared was of great value, and you're actually going to use, the tools that were shared here today. Yes. So I want to say on behalf of the Public Relations Association of Trinidad and Tobago and the non-members here today in attendance, extend a hearty thank you to our speakers, Laura Dowrich-Phillips and Soyini Grey. We are very, very grateful for you taking the time to share your expertise in crafting a press release that the media will publish. As practitioners, oftentimes we send these releases out and they're not published. And I will tell you from my personal experience, sometimes you wonder why I would sit and, a lot will go into writing this. I will attend an event, take my notes, record little snippets, so I ensure what I'm quoting is exactly what was said. And I flip through the paper day after day after day after day, and I see nothing. I'm sometimes a bit disheartened by this. I will be honest, but now I understand why. And I thank you for that. I truly understand why. We express great gratitude for you guiding us on understanding the media landscape. And there were some key takeaways for me, and I'm sure everyone else here today. Know your target audience. The key persons to send your release to, use of visuals, sound bites, ensure your content is easy to copy. We were listening, ensure your content is easy to copy. No fancy designs, nothing too long, 1-pagers. I heard that loud and clear, 1-pagers. Consider short videos. So we heard you, landscape, we heard you, right? And Laura, you said it over and over, start with the story, get to the point. We heard you, right? So I am hoping that the releases that are coming to you tomorrow, God's willing, July 1st, will be different. Yeah, there will be those that will be actually able to publish. We will see more of our stories being published. Sincere thanks to you, Tennille, for being an excellent host, and to the team for putting this professional hour together. As mentioned before, I am the Director of Membership here at Pratt, and I want to take this opportunity to encourage those that are not yet members to join this dynamic team. Consider the membership fee as an investment that yields great rewards. This is just a tip of the iceberg of what we have to offer as a team, as a pillar in the field of public relations and anything communications related. Yeah, there's a difference between those who want to get ahead and those who actually just talk about it. So be that person that does something and takes advantage of every opportunity. With that being said, thank you very much to all those here this evening, our speakers, hosts, team, members, non-members. And for those of you interested in joining Pratt, you can email me at info.pratt@gmail.com. That's info.pratt@gmail.com. Thank you again, everyone.
Thank you, Tifa. I was actually just typing the email, but I also saw our president typing as well. Well, this brings us to the end of this evening's incredible Pratt Professional Hour. I had a lot of fun. I hope everyone else did as well. Show of hands if you had fun this evening. And we're hoping to hear from you, particularly Tifa is hoping to hear from you soon to our non-members. We welcome you into the fold of the Pratt community. We appreciate you taking the time to be with us here today. Thank you again so much, Laura and Soyini, for imparting very important knowledge, particularly in an era we're not quite post-COVID as yet. But I think it's really important that we get back to the basics of understanding what drives media and communications and information, public information forward. And I think that this was a great anchoring in how we get back into the game of communicating with the people that we pledged to serve by way of public relations and communications. If anyone has any questions or any feedback that you would like to provide to the Public Relations Association of Trinidad and Tobago and our executive, please feel free to use the email that is provided in the chat. Once again, that's info.pratt@gmail.com. We are always welcoming, very happy, very grateful for any feedback, positive or where we can make improvements to ensure that, you know, we continue the momentum of providing service to community, because at the end of the day, that's our impetus for continuing to have these kinds of facilities in place. And this, as Tifa mentioned, this is just the beginning of what we are able to offer. We are celebrating 50 years this year, so it's a big year for Pratt. So we are hoping to hopefully see you guys soon in person and keep you guys posted on all of the events and activities that we have coming into play. Make sure to also follow us on social media. We are Public Relations TT on Instagram, and we're at Public Relations Association of Trinidad and Tobago on Facebook as well. So thank you so very much. We really appreciate the time that you've taken to spend with us this evening. Thank you to all of our partners and those that would have contributed significantly to producing what you would have been able to experience today. And we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you, everyone.